Hi, everybody. Welcome to Perspective Nation. Today is March 17, and we have as our guest Professor Forcheh. He is Associate Professor at the University of Western Ontario, Professor of Biostatistics, and he will be trying to explain statistics at a non-universal or non-university level to those of us who will be listening. I do appreciate those who are joining us and those who will be joining us. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to send it on our chat, or you put up your virtual hand. I will definitely bring you in to ask your question or make a comment. Professor Forcheh, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
I know I can't do justice in introducing you. Can you introduce yourself, starting from your background and how you became a professor?
Okay. Yeah, actually, people do better introducing me than myself.
We want to hear from the horse's mouth.
Okay, let me try. So, my name is Forcheh. That is my family name. My father was Chief Forcheh of Nchu in the Salta in Cameroon. So that's where the Forcheh comes from. The reason why I use Forcheh as first name and every name is that most of the time where I've been the only Forcheh for the past 30 plus years. So there's no conflict of using Forcheh. But in any case, I grew up in Cameroon, in what today they call the English-speaking part of Cameroon. And I went to school, and I eventually went to one institute called Cas Bambili, which was at that time the best high school you could go to if you were English speaking in Cameroon. And as quite a few of my colleagues, my classmates, we did science one. Science S1 was mathematics, physics, and chemistry. And then we'll add a number of other courses, like I've added further maths. And some other colleagues were brave enough to add biology. But in any case, at the end of that period, I had scholarship to go to UK to do my university studies. So I did my undergraduate at the University of London, specifically University College, and then my master's and PhD in University of Sheffield. That were in the 80s and 90s. And then when I graduated, before we graduated, there was something called Chris Economy in Cameroon, which Lapiro did a very good song. I think, was it Lapiro or the other gentleman? I think it was Lapiro. Did a very good song on Chris Economy. So I ended up going to Botswana just to go and spend about 3 years before going to Cameroon. But I ended up spending 26 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I was actually invited because they had some challenges. Most of the lecturers in Botswana, all the senior lecturers were Indians. And when I was doing my studies in the UK, I happened to be the president of the African Student Caribbean Society. So I met a lot of Africans from all the countries. And it happened that one of the PhD students went back to Botswana, and they wanted me to come to Botswana to work with them. So I ended up moving from lecturer to senior lecturer to associate professor to head of department. And that's what kept me in Botswana for so long. So eventually I did those years, and I came to Canada in 2019. And so I've been in Canada permanently from 2019. My initial work in Canada was to be to do a research at University of York in the project York University from 2019 to 2022, and then from 2022 January till now I'm at Western.
Wow. I think you have a lot of history and lots of experience. I'm happy that you'll be giving us examples in Canada as well as Africa, because that's our focus, and even the Caribbean. Those are really what this podcast is out for. So now that we know who you are and you've been doing statistics in all these places, what is actually the meaning of statistics? Is this just looking at numbers?
Yeah, so statistics as a profession, the name statistics actually started in around 1860, and it was coined from a German word Statistik, which actually meant political economy. And the idea was that, you see, people have always been doing statistics. It's not like it's a new thing. People have always been doing statistics. but as a profession, it didn't exist as a profession. So, so the formal subject of statistics started then. Before that, there was probability, and probability was precisely about quantifying uncertainty. So what we do in statistics up to today is rooted in, well, statistics as a science is rooted in quantifying uncertainty as a science. As a non-science, it's just the issue of being able to determine, for example, the early use of statistics was to determine how many children were being born every year in a particular town, how many of them were males, how many were females, how many children were dying, how many people were dying, how many people were being baptized. So the initial statistics was just on that aspect. Today, that aspect of statistics is called vital statistics, where when you are born, they register your birth, they give you a birth certificate, they register where you were born. When you die, they go and report that this person has died, they register your death certificate and so on. So those are called vital statistics, but that is where statistics started. What we do as statisticians in terms of science is quantifying uncertainty.
All right. So when you say quantifying uncertainty, what does it mean for a layman's term? What does it mean to my grandmother?
So it will mean, for example, let's take this podcast. We want to say how many people do we expect to turn out in this podcast? For whatever reason, we want to be able to say how many people do we expect to turn out on this podcast? Do we have any information that can help us give an estimate? One way that we can look at it is say, okay, let's look at the history of the podcast and say, let's make an estimate based on how many people we expect to turn off. Okay. One history can say, let's just look at the average number that have turned up every 4 podcasts and use it as our estimate. Another estimate can say, let's bring additional information. For example, is it the time of the month? Let's suppose we're in the 3rd week of the month. Do we tend to have more people or less people than the average? So we use that type of information to quantify, to say how many people do we expect in this podcast?
Okay. Now that we've got that clear and we know what it is or how we can use it, my next question is, there is this challenge within our community, the Black community, of getting involved or knowing what statistics is. So how can we within the community improve our literacy or our knowledge of statistics among us? And how can our communities, business community, traditional communities, churches, how can they use statistics to improve their operations?
Yeah, I think that's very important. During my time in Botswana, I got to Botswana just after Mandela had been released, and Chesna was in Botswana when he became president. And he had a minister of finance called Trevor Manuel. And my first conference post-apartheid as an academy was in South Africa. And Trevor Manuel gave a speech as a guest of honor, which changed my career. He said, I am a politician. And as a politician, I want to say only the nice things about what is happening to our country. Unemployment, crime, economic growth, and all of that. But I'm also a policy maker. As a policy maker, I need the facts. I need correct information to make good policy. And he said, you statistician can give me correct information. And since then, my career changed totally. My approach to statistics, especially, and I think that's one of the reasons I stayed in Botswana for so long, was because I realized I could contribute to what he was challenging us. So what does that mean? He came out, he had a statistician general called Pali. Pali just retired about a few years back. Actually, he retired the year before I left Botswana, and we actually met. And Pali became the champion of statistics. And Pali said was, if you are not counted, you don't count. If you are not counted, you don't count. He developed statistics in South Africa to become one of the leading statistical associations in the world, not in Africa, in the world. Because he had Trevor Manuel, the Minister of Finance, and he had himself who said, if you are not counted, you don't count. What does that mean? If we are talking about policy in Canada, and the survey is done to find out what people think, if no Black person goes, no Black person will be counted, therefore no Black person will count.
So let's take COVID-19 as a recent example.
Yeah.
When they started administering this vaccine, even though some of us resisted and our traditional beliefs, doesn't mean if we were not taking that survey, or we didn't take the vaccine, or we were not counted, what is the government going to do? Why would they be making policies if they know that this community is never going to take part, or it's not willing to take part in such events?
Thank you. That is, you've put a nail on the head. If you are not counted, you don't count. Remember, this is Pali, Statistician General in South Africa post-apartheid. So apartheid is no longer, South Africa is no longer being ruled by whites. And he is trying to make policy to address all the iniquities that have taken place for 100 years. And he wants to get information from you, and you don't want to give the information. He can't make policy. So if we come to COVID-19, and we said, we are making trials to see whether COVID-19 is working or not. Then we as a community say we're not going to participate in the trial. The medication that comes is really relevant to us, but there's no other medication available because we refuse to take part in the trial. Whatever they do that we refuse to take part in, we don't count because we have not been counted. So it's very important. That statement that Pali made helped him develop Statistics South Africa from, actually in 1996, Botswana had a better census than South Africa. Today, South Africa is the leading country in conducting any statistics.
What does that mean? Does it mean post-apartheid South Africa, even those who were being marginalized, does it mean they now see statistics as a very important tool in policy making, and then they take part in doing surveys and things like that? Is that what that means? Precisely.
One of my research, if I show my research pages, one of the research that I did in South Africa using South African data was issue of causes of death, because that was very important. HIV, TB, and so on were leading causes of death. So I did research on that. The data from South Africa were so good, I could do any scientific study and give them advice. Because everybody understood, well, not everybody, but most people understood that when somebody passes on, it is my interest to report that death. When a child is born, it is my interest to report that the child is born. When somebody goes to school, it's my interest to report that this person has gone to school. Whatever area, if I'm working, it's my interest to report that I'm working, not fearing that I'm going to pay tax. So because the statistics quality is so high, they can make pinpoint decisions that affect the community.
All right. So let's give us a good example where you with numbers, where a scenario, a real world scenario, where they've actually used data to make a policy that we can actually see that because of this data, there's been a change due to that policy. Maybe in Canada, or South Africa, Botswana, or Cameroon. Do you have any specific example that you can give us?
Okay. Yeah. Remember, as I said, maybe going back to why I'm a statistician.
Yes.
As a young Cameroonian, we are very proud Cameroonians. Today, some Cameroonians have issue of being Cameroonians. I'm not one of them because I grew up when being a Cameroonian was better than being a citizen of any country. So when I was asked to do statistics, my friend used to laugh at me and said, we are all trying to do engineering, petroleum, you are saying to do statistics. And I was one of the top performers. Actually, was 10 in my year, the whole Cameroon. But they asked to do statistics. After 1 year, I told them, no, I'm in the right profession. Why am I in the right profession? If you look at Europe, America, nobody talk about hunger anymore. Now, in 1900s, Europe was starving. If you know why the Irish migrated everywhere in the world, it was because of hunger. The impact that statistics did in agriculture became the reason why statistics became a main science statistics. What do they do? Because of statistics, they were able to take maize, for example. They were able to take maize as a crop, say, where do we plant maize? How do we improve the yield? And all of the things that go with it. And statistician came and said, okay, because we can manage uncertainty, we will tell you this species of maize does best in this environment, and it is useless in this environment. This type of fertilizer does best with this species, it is useless in this species. So statisticians were able to design experiments which were able to give you the optimum yield in any crop species, in any environment, in any weather condition. Okay, and all of that happened through the 40s. So in Europe, nobody talk about hunger anymore because statistics help them to nail with pinpoint accuracy how much production, how much yield you will get per acre of your plot given certain inputs. So after that, statistics went to health because health at that time was trial and error. And they came with design of experiments. So in the design of experiments, that's why we're able to develop all the medication you have. and able to define all the side effects of those medications, and able to decide the dosage that is optimal. All of that work is quantifying uncertainty using statistical methods. So that is the general perspective of it. Within South Africa, the same thing has happened in all the policy areas except energy. Except energy. If anybody follows South African news, South Africa is competing now with Cameroon and Nigeria in terms of blackouts. Okay, but the reasons they are political, not statistics.
Okay, so we have a comment, and I'm going to read it. And well, I think it's more or less a question. What kind of awareness or measures do they do to get the population to participate in statistics for something that will benefit them? So, like the case in South Africa, what measures did they do? How did they implement that?
Well, the first thing about statistics is that people have to understand, why am I giving my information? So if I come to you, let's take population census. I happen to have been in Cameroon when they were doing some post-census survey, and I was in the village, and they are trying to count people, and people think, okay, why are they counting us? And some people think we should give more people than we have. We should record people. Some people don't understand, why am I giving this data? And it doesn't help when you don't trust your government. When you don't trust your government, it's very difficult to trust them to give you many information. The only thing I can tell you that statistical office are trustworthy because they are conscious that we need good information, and we can only give information if people trust us. So my advice for all of us in Canada is that the Canadian government uses statistics enormously for policy making. Let's ensure that anything that want to count us, let's be counted. Okay, Canada is unlikely to abuse your data because the ethical concerns in Canada are extreme. If I collect data here and I want to publish that data, I have to confirm every aspect that your data were collected with your consent, and I will not misuse them for anything other than what I collected for. So in Canada, you can give your data with very little consent that will be misused. But always remember, it is your interest to give your data, because if you don't count, if you're not counted, you don't count.
So let's go a step back. So from what I'm hearing from you, before we even start collecting this data, there is a need for sensitization. Go out there and educate the people about why they are giving this data. How do we go about this process? Like Cameroon, Nigeria, for example, where do you start by telling people, oh, we are coming in 2 days to collect a population census? This is it. How do you start? How do you go about that?
Thank you, Ebonge. You know, I traveled all South African countries, and sometimes you almost cry because in a place like Botswana, where I end up staying a lot, and I think the reasons were clear why I stayed a lot. In that country, every policy, before the policy go to discuss in parliament, from the president to the minister to the MP, has gone to the villages, not to towns. They call them cutlass, and discuss with the people, we are thinking about this policy. What do you think? Any policy, before you ever get to parliament. Now, the same thing happened with data collection. If I now leave and want to go to Botswana and collect data, not only will I go to the relevant ministry and get permission, the first thing I will do is go to the villages with somebody who can speak Botswana. We are coming next week or so on to collect data on this aspect. So by the time we arrive, the citizens, everybody know we are coming. It doesn't matter what survey you are doing. You go to a lot of our other countries where the governance is a big brother. It doesn't understand that the governance is for the people, and you are there for the people. We miss that aspect. Of course, there's also the issue of conflicts, where there's nothing you can do. When there are conflicts, you can't really collect data. But the simple way of doing is that the citizen needs to be confident that you are doing the right thing, and you need to do that sensitization in advance to the community for them to know, why are you collecting data on us? So unfortunately, a lot of our countries don't do that because they don't value the importance of the citizens. They don't realize that you became president because of the citizens, not the other way around. So, but from statistical perspective, we are confident. If I went to Cameroon to collect data, there's no way I'll collect the data before I send somebody to go and tell the village that I'm coming next week or in 2 weeks' time, because I'm a professional.
Okay.
There's no way I will not even go to the village and come to collect data and start asking you questions. No.
Okay, let's come back to our own local population here. We have some business people listening, community leaders listening, people who work in the IT industry listening. If they want to organize, say, an event, party, whatever event, small event, and they want to educate people to attend that event, what would be your advice? What would be your advice if they have done this event, say, for 4 or 5 years, and they want to make it better this year in terms of numbers? What would be your advice? And how, like a consultant, you're also a consultant. If somebody comes and says, this is what I want to do, these are my numbers for last year or the past 4 years, I need to improve these numbers by 20%. How do you go about that?
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good question. Sorry, you'll find that I tend to deviate a bit before I answer my question because I believe in giving the background to my answer. So
well, you are a professor, so
okay,
I can't question your logic.
Okay, yeah, but sometimes I'm just saying people should understand that I tend to give the background to my answer. So don't think that I'm going out of topic. I'm just giving the background.
Okay.
If you watch TV, like you watch a major event, they are dominated by what they call commercials. What people don't know about the commercials is that the work that led to the starting of commercials and integral part was done by an African American called W.E. Du Bois. W.E. Du Bois was interested in various things to do with our race and so on. He was African American. But the important was that he developed and found that advertisement was an integral part of business growth, even though he was doing it from a non-business perspective. So what does that mean? If you want to grow as a business, it's critically important that you collect data that informs you of how your business is doing. It's critically important. Don't be afraid of tax and taxman and so on, and not collect data. Collect every detailed data. For example, targeted marketing. What does it do? Targeted marketing will say, who are those who are coming to Perspective Nations every week? What are their characteristics? What are they looking for? They get that information as often as possible. Once they get that information, they try to seek out in the community who are other people who look like them and send that information to them. Okay? Who are other people who have this characteristic of these people who are coming to Perspective Nation? We look in the community using any data source that we can get and send the information to them. That's exactly what you see in YouTube. That's what we see in Facebook. They are using exactly those statistical things to say, I collect the data, I find that, okay, I was selling wine, white wine, and these are people who are buying white wine. So who are those other people who look like them? The moment I see somebody like the person who bought my last bottle of white wine, I send the advert to them. The moment I see somebody who played Michael Jackson, I find somebody who look like them, I send the advert to Michael Jackson to them. Targeted advertisement. So unless you collect the data, you can't do that targeted advertisement. So take care of your customer, know your customers.
So what type of data should we be collecting? Is it the age of the people? Is it their salary? What type? Like when you say data, there are just so many variables here. What are we actually looking for? Especially in the case of Canada, where we have community leaders who want to bring people together and things like that. What should they be looking for?
Okay, the specific nature of data you collect will depend on first of all what service you are providing, what product you are providing, and how you want to grow the business. If you're talking about business people, so if we talk about Canada, let's take somebody who is doing a business and selling food, Cameroonian food or West African food. They call them African Caribbean shops here. So yes. Let's just somebody who's running an African Caribbean shop. The type of data you collect is that each time, I actually went to one of the shops today. Each time somebody comes in, either electronically or by questionnaire, you collect information about them. Okay, so one thing that you can do is that you have those cards, you know, like this shop that give you benefit cards. So you can have a card where somebody earn 1 point for every $10 they spend.
Yeah.
In that card, you record the key information they want to use for tracking. So each time they buy, your computer will already know this person came this week, this week, this week. You can give that data to us, and we'll give you the pattern of all type of people. We can give statistical method to give you that. But you have to collect the data first, remember. So all the way I can do is that I give you the card, and that card, you're going to earn 1 point for every $10 you spend.
Yeah.
Okay. And it helps you collect data that you could not collect otherwise. Or you can miss a questionnaire. Every now and then people come, you said, okay, I'll do a questionnaire. What do you need? What brought you here, and so on. So it depends on what you want. But as statistician, we can also advise you based on your interest on how to design the data collection tool. We can do that as statisticians.
Are you saying all these corporations that from Walmart to Canadian Tire, Petro-Canada, we have all these point cards, Optimum cards and all whatnot. Some of them you even scan your phone, Aeroplan. Are you saying they do those things just to get data from us?
Well, because I've not worked for any of them, I can't say only, but I know primarily. Okay, since I've not worked for any of them, I know primary reason is to get data. That's the primary reason. Any other reason is secondary. The primary reason to get data. And remember, Canada has an integrated system, integrated data. What does that mean? In Canada, I can give my phone number and they can go to a system and my phone number tie me to almost everything. Or depending on where the information is starting, it can be your SIN number. It can take you to everywhere. So what you'll find is that, or sometimes just your driver license, because it has an integrated data system. They don't need to collect so much information to know about each person. So if you go to a place where the system is not integrated, you will need to collect a lot more information before you can know about the person.
All right, let's talk about this integrated data system. How much information do they have about me? Say the Canadian system here. What do they know about me? Apart of my age, maybe sex, what else do they know?
It will just depend on who is looking for the information. People have access to your information at varying levels. So what I would ask any one of us listening to do is that each time you go to do something where they ask some ID, just check which ID they ask and how much information it came up on. Whether it was your bank or it was in what do you call any of the government offices. When they ask you, I want to see one ID, when they take that ID, just ask them just to see the screen, how much information they have about you from that ID. Then you will have an idea how much information that particular system has. They may have more, okay? They may have more than what is shown on the screen, but what they will say, the reason why they can ask your driver license and it's enough is because apart from your driver license, they may know your residential address, for example. So they don't need to ask you anymore. Because if they need to know your residential address and your driver license did not point to that, they will have to ask you. So any information that you give them, let's say you go to I'm not sure which shop people buy. Let's suppose you went to Staples and you want to buy a laptop. And they ask you one piece of ID to create your credit. And that ID was enough. Clearly, they were not using just that ID. So how much other information did they get from that ID? You know how much information Staples has to your database. So it would depend. Your health data, most of it is protected. But let's suppose you went to, if you're in Brampton and you went to Brampton Civic and they take your health card and put in, how much information do you get from your health card from that Brampton Civic? Because they don't ask all the information about you. Okay.
Yeah. So by regulation, are we allowed to ask that, and is the person on the other end required to provide that information if I ask?
No. Isn't it the whole purpose is not to survey people. The whole purpose, if you went to every shop you went and people ask you, what is your date of birth? Where do you live?
No, this is my question.
When that you get tired yourself. So the system is meant to facilitate communication. But what I'm just saying is that, how much information they keep on you is also based on legislation.
Yeah, so what I'm asking, that's what I'm going to. Does the legislation allow me, say if I go to buy a car and they say, give me your driver's license, and I give them my driver's license, and they put in whatever information they put in there, am I also allowed now to say, okay, because you've asked for my driver's license, whatever information you are accessing belongs to me. I want to see the amount of information you get?
I would believe so. I don't know, because I have not followed Canada legislation to that level. For all the things that there used to be one lady called Margaret Thatcher, for her unpopularity that she was, she actually brought in one of the most important legislation in UK when I was a student. She said any information that is heard digitally about somebody, the person has a right to that information. It was probably the only policy Margaret Thatcher brought that I was happy with. Any information that is heard digitally on me, I have the right to know that information. So I would presume, since Canada is part of Her Majesty country, I would presume they probably have that same law here, which means you can request the information and you should have a right to have it. But I've not checked that decision. I cannot claim that I know that it exists.
Okay, so let's move forward. Let's talk about big data. You know, nowadays we are bombarded with information. Everywhere you go, there is just so much information out there. And sometimes we don't know what is right and what is right. Sometimes it's so confusing. Sometimes people are reading from the same, I would say, from the same information source, and they're giving you different opinion. You know, somebody might say, oh, based on the data from Red Cross or whatever, 400 people died in a situation. And another person is still saying, based on information from Red Cross, only 23 people died. How do we, with all this information and all this huge data that we have there, how do me as an ordinary citizen distinguish between credible information or credible or non-credible information? Is there any statistical trick that I can use to pick out what is credible and what is not credible?
That's a powerful question. You know,
or maybe it's for people who might be calling
your question is great. Your question is great. Your question is absolutely great. You see, remember I started by saying what statisticians try to do is to quantify uncertainty.
Yes.
So whenever there's uncertainty, there are going to be boundaries on how much we know about any event. And in the old days, which I'm not trying to say the old days were better anyway, mind you, I'm not one of those people who say the old days were better. No. In the old days, you had scientific publications where before you publish anything, they went through reviews and there were experts who checked to see where you're being factually correct and so on. So I could go and take a journal article and have the faith that this journal article had been vetted and confirmed by experts to be correct. So I could take that information to a large extent to be correct. Today, we are all experts because we can collect any information and make a beautiful podcast or a beautiful YouTube and sell it. And nobody is vetting that information to see where it's correct or not. Now, it's challenging even to the expert now to know what the truth is in a lot of situations. It's challenging even to the expert. And ChatGPT has come up, and I hear professors, I am with professors who are complaining, no, students are going to cheat in the assignment. And so when I look at it, I just laugh. I say, what it's telling me is that we've not kept track with technology. Today, you can take my picture and create all sorts of animation with my picture and it will look like I'm the one doing the act with technology. How do you decipher that is fake, not fiction? It's a problem that is beyond statistics. That is the AI world. What is facts, what is fiction? Is beyond the AI world. And therefore, it's not something I could deal with and tell you that statistical methods will do this. What statisticians do is we have tools and methods that allow us to collect objective information, and then we make predictions based on those objective information. But we don't have tools that will tell us that this is the fact. We don't have those tools as statistics.
Anyway, yeah, so just so we have this on April 14, we're actually going to be having somebody who does AI. She's a specialist in artificial intelligence. She will be a guest on this show. Adolphina Wilson, she does with precision machines, and she's talking about how artificial intelligence is changing manufacturing. Yep. So yeah, we'll have somebody to discuss that topic as well. Yep. Yeah, that's it. Now, the Black community, we are always, in every place we go, they always tell us we are overrepresented, especially in the criminal justice system, in prisons, on some health situations. Can you explain that to us? What does it mean statistically by being overrepresented, say in the criminal justice system, in the prisons, for example? How do you draw that threshold, and how do you get those numbers to make that decision?
Okay, yeah. So the overrepresentation is basically saying is based on relative proportions. So let's suppose in Ontario, 5% of the population of Ontario is Black or African Americans and African Caribbean and so on. And then you go to a particular institution and you find that 20% within that institutions were Black. That means they are overrepresented, i.e. their proportion in that institution is much higher than the proportion in the national population that sends people to that institution. So you are saying everybody in this population has the potential to end up in that institution, but now we see that we have 5 times as many people from this community as they come from the population that is supplying people to that. Then we say they're overrepresented. Or underrepresented will be the same thing. So let's suppose 5% of the population, let's even narrow it down, not the whole population. Let's say 5% of all health professionals in Canada, African Americans or Black. And then you go and find that at the level of matrons is only 1%. That's out of the 5% who are in the health sciences, only 1% is the matrons. Then it looks like the proportion of Black people as matrons is lower than the proportion in the medical services. There's no point using the proportion in the whole population because the whole population cannot become matrons. Only those with the medical service can become matrons. Same thing go to the police. You go to the police and you find that 2% of the police force are Black, but only 1% are police commissioners. They can say the police commissioner, the Black underrepresented because their proportion is much smaller than the number of Black as police commissioners. Again, it doesn't help to go to the entire population because not everybody in the population can become a police commissioner, only those who are in the police service, for example. So that is the way that they measure underrepresentation or overrepresentation.
But does that really mean a bad thing? Is it bad or it's just a number?
There are times where it could be good and bad. The important thing is that we need to know that it is there, and then you can do further work to know why it is there. So let's take the prison case. If we look at the prison case, the United States is particularly problematic because we now know why it is like that. The reason why you have gross overrepresentation of African American or Black, especially African American in the prison service, because the prison service was used to replace slavery. What does that mean? When slavery ended, the people who owned farms still needed free or cheap labor in the United States, either free or cheap. The prison service became a way of supplying them with cheap labor, in the sense that when you're a prisoner, you do nothing except go and work in those farms. And what they will do is just pay the city council. The city council is making money from the prison labor. The prisoner is not making any money because they're a prisoner. So the history of the prison system in the US came from that basis. And therefore, it is not surprising that it is grossly overrepresented in terms of the number of African Americans in jail. Because it doesn't add value to take, it adds value to take an African American and put them for 5 years, 10 years, and every time they make an offense, you record it, and then they prolong their sentence because they are working for free in prison. So once you know that they're overrepresented, you can now say, what is the reason? How can we get rid of that reason? So, but again, is what? If you are not counted, you don't count. Once we count and say they're overrepresented, we now count and say, how do we get rid of that problem? So if I came to, for example, Western, and I look at, we are doing EDI, equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so on. Yes. And you say, okay, how many statisticians are Western? And you find that probably it's about 0.1%. How many Black statisticians in Western? Maybe 0.1%. How many Black statisticians are in Canada? If it is 0.1%, then there's no underrepresentation because it's just proportionate to the population. If the population of Black statisticians in Canada is 0.05, then Western is doing very well, even though it's 0.1%. Because they're having more than the national average. So again, what does it mean? You are counted, then you count.
Okay. Let's talk about the role of ethics in statistics. Does ethics actually play any role? You've just given two examples where the same thing can mean good in one situation and bad in another situation. Does ethics really play any role in statistics?
Yeah. Actually, yesterday I was in a meeting where they brought the lady who was in charge of ethics, and we're discussing, and I asked a number of questions. Now, what they call ethics in health sciences and statistics being a cornerstone of that really came to a fore after during the Second World War, where the Nazis experimented on human beings the same way that people used to experiment on rats and so on. And as a consequence, there was an ethics committee that set up to put the guidelines on how you conduct any experiment involving human subjects. That was called, after the Nuremberg trials in 1948, that came up. And up to today, those ethical rules have been refined and refined and refined. And because the whole essence is about collecting data, ethics in statistics is a cornerstone of what we do. So what they have today is what they call informed consent. Informed consent means if I'm going to collect data and use that, like you just did, you say you're going to record and ask people opinion. Do you want to be recorded? That is part of ethical considerations. You don't want to record somebody who has not given their consent. So ethics play a fundamental role in data collection and even how we report the data. So if I collected data where it is possible to pinpoint an individual based on my data, then I have to take that individual out. Let me give you an example. If I were collecting data on incomes, and it turned out that within the institution, only one particular individual is earning one salary. If I include salary there, from that salary, I can know who the individual is and find all their details. As a statistician, I will take out either salary altogether or that individual for their own good, that nobody should be able to use my data and pinpoint who gave that information. So from statistics, ethics is a cornerstone of what we do. And without those ethical guidelines, we cannot go to somebody and say, give me your data, because they cannot trust me that their data is safe in my hands. They cannot trust me unless I can guarantee that their data are safe, they are going to be used only for improvement of our welfare. Yeah, so ethics are very important.
Okay, so you've said ethics are very important, but we've had a lot of situations where companies misplace data. Somebody hacks into a system and then they get all the data out. Who is ethically responsible for that?
Well, yeah, you know what I love? I had a friend of mine, I was a statistician and he was doing computer science. And he was one of these young English guys who just liked to be, I don't know any of you who was old enough to watch Superman, and Richard Pryor was this brain who was hacking and taking money out of. This guy was like, Richard Pryor was not Superman. His fun was just to crack systems. So he came to me and said, Forcheh, I can get the data from here. I can get student marks. He was a computer programmer he didn't do anything with that data. It was just the fun of being able to write a code that could crack that. Now, there are people who can do that and crack that data and misuse it. Okay, so the issue of cracking systems is actually part of testing your system, how reliable it is, not an evil. It's the information that they use. But that is not to do with statistical ethics. It's just to do with human beings who have interest.
Well, this is my point.
In showing how good they are.
If I trust you to give you my data, and I give you the data knowing that you are going to keep it safe, and you do your best to keep it safe, but somehow the data gets out there, who is ethically responsible? Is it me for trusting you, or is it you for not keeping it well, or is it the person who gets it out? I don't care how the data is used. There has to be some ethical consequences.
I agree.
What do statisticians think? In my opinion, we should blame you for allowing me to trust you.
Okay, first of all, data that we collect. For example, I did collect some data for a student. I'm teaching on a graduate course, and in January I collected some data on them, and I actually use that for teaching today. And they're all health science students, so they are not really involved in statistics. But I said, I want to show you something that is important. These data are collected on you. As a statistician, I'm sharing this data, but I must make sure that no student in this class can see who said what. We have tools which we call anonymization. We have to anonymize the questionnaire in such a way that if somebody hacked to my database, they can collect the data, but they will not know who it is. Now, if you come to your banking information, it may be slightly different, okay, depending on how the banks have stored the information. And I've been reflecting on that. It is actually possible to use databases, because databases were the best way of collecting information, which is multi-level. I'm thinking it's possible to use databases where you give different level of hierarchy and secure the hierarchy at different levels, so that even somebody here, they cannot go to the other place. I don't know, because I'm not working in databases. Yeah. However, what we do as statisticians is that once I finish collecting the data, I do what we call anonymize the data. So that even if you hack and collect that data, you should not be able to pinpoint who provided what information. We anonymize it. We have ways of doing it. And it's pretty easy. I can sit down with anybody and show you how to anonymize your data. And that's one we store. Any other information that you store, take it out of the network. Don't put it on the network, because somebody cannot hack something that's not on the network. So like if somebody is involved in crypto, we call them your code key, where you store information that is not on the network. So that information we can store for backup. But any information that we want to be in public usage, we anonymize it.
Okay. Let me go to the institution that you've been working for almost 30 years now, universities, for example. Why is it that data and research and information that the university usually collects, and sometimes we give them our data for free, why is it so difficult for them to come back and report to us on what are the statistical consequences, or what are the statistical results of this data that we've given to them?
Wow, that is such a wonderful question. You know, I think it's probably our lack of knowledge on what the ethical guidelines say. When you read, I was actually asked to do a paper on ethics for researchers, and that is why I spent a lot of time. And I actually wanted to introduce it as a core course in the department, but my colleagues did not agree. The first thing that they say about ethical consideration is that if I collect data on the population, once I get finding on that population, I must give it back to that population. I must inform the population either through workshops or inform publication that this is what I found. Okay, so the question you ask is that it's already covered by ethical considerations. Now, if I went to a official publication to collect data, they will see that when I do a report, I must send to the library free of charge. The reason of sending that copy to the library is that anybody who is interested in the findings should be able to go and find that report in the library.
Well, I'm talking about my country meeting, or my friends will go play soccer every day. Somebody shows up, we give him our data, the person disappears.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that if the person has ethical clearance to collect the data, part of that ethical clearance required that person to communicate back to you. Now, how to communicate back to you in terms of most ethical clearance, that if I write a book or a research publication of that I found, I should put in the library, because there may not be any way of getting back to you, even if they wanted to. They may not have contact back to you, but if you put in the library and somebody was interested, they could go seeking. They could go to the library and see it. That used to be the old regulations. Now that everything is being digital and the library are not playing a big role, I'm not sure how much that has been addressed. But you have a right. What you can do if you're a conscious person is that if somebody is asking you information, you can just ask them, how am I going to get the findings from this data you are collecting, and hear what they tell you. But by ethical consideration, they have a responsibility to inform the people from which they collected the data what the outcome of their research was.
Okay, so just before I go to the last question, I want to let those who are listening know that there is actually a survey going on in the community about the post-impact condition of COVID for the Black community, especially those who had preconditions. It's done by Professor Ntonghanwah of Thunder Bay University. If anybody or group of people are interested, please reach out. I think we've heard that if you're not counted, what is the word again? You don't count.
You don't count.
If you're not counted, you don't count. So I hope this will inspire some people to take that survey. It's actually going to help the Canadian government, well, mostly the Ontario government, to design policies if there's any pandemic in future. Also, the Council of Nigerian Professionals, they have a huge event. Please make sure you register. Go to their website, cnpngo.ca, and register. This is a limited place event. It's a Black History Impact Celebration. And the keynote speaker is Justice Kofi Benz. He is one of the few chief justices in Canada who is well, actually, this one he's actually born in Ghana. So it's going to be an opportunity to interact and network with him. Again, it's going to take place on April 29, 2023. It's an in-person event. I think lunch is going to be provided. So please make sure you register and attend this event. Now, my last questions before we round up. What are you going to tell my younger Black brothers and sisters who want to become a statistician? What are the skills? What are the traits? What are the training they should obtain if they want to become statisticians?
Wow, that's very interesting. You talk about training as statistician. When I was given scholarship with statistics, I think I went to UK, and I was among all of what were doing who were giving scholarship. I was the only one doing statistics, and then there were a lot of people came with mathematics behind me, and I look at what they were doing. And remember, I was a mathematician. I like everything that had to do with mathematics. I mean, everything. There's nothing that had to do with mathematics I didn't like. So I was doing statistics like, okay, side thing. And I went and looked at what the future held and advised most of them to move to statistics. And those days, the Cameroon government was still quite listening, and they knew the importance of statistics. And a lot of them moved into statistics. A number of them own their own companies now, because as they went to Africa, they stayed them in Europe and went to America, and they own consulting companies, which are multi-million companies running around, which it was going to be very difficult for them to do as mathematicians. So statistics offers you enormous opportunities, even with the competition that has come for the so-called data science, which is actually a subset of statistics. And I have family members who did biochemistry in their first degree, and their doctor, they have PhD in statistics, and they did biochemistry in Cameroon. I knew professors who did sciences in their undergraduate, and they went to do statistics, and they're the leading statisticians. So statistics is a combination of many things: mathematics, computing, objectivity as well. Just knowing how to be objective, how to be objective is a cornerstone of statistics. How to be logical is a cornerstone of statistics. So if you feel that, and data science is part of statistics, it's not outside statistics. And these are areas where, especially in developing countries, are integral to AI. They're integral to everything you do. So if you feel an interest, the idea that I don't know mathematics, I cannot do statistics is unfortunate. It's partly because we don't teach statistics properly to students. It's partly because some people did statistics or mathematics, and they thought they can frighten other that I'm so special that you cannot be like me. There's nobody who cannot do statistics or mathematics, especially statistics. Let me talk about statistics. There's anybody from history to geography to theology, you can do statistics. I've actually, since I've been here, some of the things that I do online is to assist students, and I've assisted quite a few. So a few of them paid, many of them unpaid, but a few of them paid, who have faced statistics very badly, and we have maybe several weeks of tutorials. And I tell them, I do tutorials because you want to understand, not to help you get more marks. If you are coming to me because I want to get marks without understanding, I don't do tutorials. And one of them just wrote to me from UK. She's from Saudi Arabia. She's now decided to do her project using statistics, but before she was just trying to pass. Somebody had told her she cannot do statistics. That's a lie. Anybody can do statistics. I'm a professor in statistics. I can tell you that anyone here, if you can become a professor in statistics, you'll be better than me, because the way you approach life is as a statistician. If you decide today, you know what, I want to take a break, and the next 4 years I'll be a professor in statistics, you will be.
Oh, that will be a long break. Maybe I'll need 6. Well, thank you so much for the discussion. Thank you so much for the lecture. Thanks everybody who's been here: Yinka, Viv, Didier, Atabong. Adeji Sola. It's been a pleasure having you. I think we are going to put this one up on YouTube. It's really, really informative. Again, the CMP event of April 29, the link is on the chat. Please go to Eventbrite and register. It's been a wonderful time having you. I have so many questions I would have asked, and I've learned a lot, and I hope everybody listening have learned a lot. Please, maybe there are some business people here who would like to contact you or who would like to reach out to you for advice. What would you say to them?
No, let me just give you, just last night, one of our students in New York is doing something on supply chain, and I think he got my contact from last year. There was a small WhatsApp group that was created by black students at York who were doing projects, and I was assisting them. So one of them gave him, and he's doing something on supply chain and looking at halal and logistics. And we spent about 1 hour yesterday advising him on what to do with his work on statistics and so on. There's another student here who is trying to do his PhD in physiotherapy. I spent 1 hour with him trying to look at how he collects his data. And because there are young Africans who want to do that, those ones I don't charge them anything. It's part of my community work. For business people, depending on what you have, if you are a good business person, I'll charge you a professional fee. If you are an upcoming business person, we look at what you can afford for my time and I charge you that. If you're a student in the community who is just struggling, I can always find at least 1 hour in a month to help you as community work. So it just depends on what you want. I can provide help, any type of help that you want.
Okay.
As I said, from a professional fee to no fee at all, depending on your ability and your needs.
Well, I think we'll be sending out messages to our young students there to get assistance from you, and hopefully one of them is going to replace you at that Western University.
Oh no, I will be not even replaced. I want more of them. I want to see 10, 20 statisticians in each of the universities in Canada, and the farmer paid a lot of money. For those who are interested in money, the pharmaceutical industry pay a lot of money, and there are some of our youth who are doing very well in many of these companies.
Well, we are out of time, but let me just ask you this question. You are a biostatistician. Do you do a lot of biostatistics for the pharma industry, for the pharmaceutical industry?
I'm a biostatistician with respect to my current position. I'm a statistician with respect to my training. So if you are a business person who is looking at forecasting and so on, you just come, we'll help you do your forecasting. I have a BSc, MSc, and PhD all in statistics. So there's no area of statistics I didn't do. I specialize in multivariate analysis, but a lot of my work has been in Africa, which means I've had to do with data related to government policies. So my biostatistics is a consequence of being in Canada and the project that I've been doing and the work that I've been asked to do, not a specialization, no.
Okay, all right. Let me end with this comment. Thank you very much, Doctor. Really appreciate all the insight you provided.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for even daring to come to statistics presentation.
Again, please, I'm just going to give you guys a rundown for the next 5 events. The first one is going to be tips on buying and selling cars. We are going to have somebody who is a manager of the Toyota dealership to give us the insight. Again, I talk about how artificial intelligence is transforming manufacturing. We are going to have somebody, senior HR representative, to tell us about career potential. We'll be looking about your resume, your salary, and promotion. And then we have somebody from the financial world telling us how to beat the debt trap or how to get out of debt. And we'll talk about the food safety, the standards, and the controls in Ontario. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I will see all of you next time or in 2 weeks. And I wish you the best. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Good night.
No, thank you. Thank you for all who came, and stay blessed.